Hello and welcome to PCI Webinars. Today's webinar, Library Outreach Reimagined, Operation Warm, with Allison Price, Heather Connelly, and Cornelia Beckett. Allison is the Director of Development at Operation Warm, and she oversees granting, library community outreach, and data analysis. Her experience includes serving as administrator for 13 years in New England and Mid-Atlantic area schools. She has degrees from Wellesley College and Harvard University with a focus on school leadership and parent-school community partnerships. Heather, Vice President of Development and Community Partnerships at Operation Warm, and in her role, she works collaboratively to both fundraise and execute community coat giving across the country. Previously, she spent 10 years working in various leadership roles with nonprofit programs. Our third speaker is Cornelia Beckett, and Cornelia is our library representative today, and she'll be speaking about Operation Warm in her library and how it works. Coming to you now, it's Allison, Cornelia, and Heather.
Good morning, everyone. This is Heather, and I'm going to kick it off this morning. I want to start off just by letting you all know that although Cornelia is a library expert, both Allison and I are not. We are nonprofit experts, so forgive us if we say something that's not exactly correct, but we've learned a lot about libraries over the last few years, and we'll certainly do our best. I also want to let you know that if you have questions throughout the presentation, please type them in that discussion area, and we will certainly get to everyone's questions. We may not address them immediately, as we may cover that material later in the presentation, but we will definitely get to you all. And of course, we'll provide our contact information for any specific questions that you all may have. We're super excited to have the opportunity to present this program to you all. It was originally presented in February at the last conference that happened, I think, before everything went crazy in the world. So we had a great response to what we presented in February, and are, again, like I said, very happy to be able to have the opportunity to present it to you as well. So today, my job is going to be covering the Operation Warm overview for you all and give you a little background on who we are and what we do. And then Allison will jump in to talk about the program background and goals, the program growth, our outcomes, some of the lessons learned, as well as our future plan and new partnerships. And Cornelia will jump in the middle of some of that material to give you the perspective of what it's like to be on the library side and do this project in the real world. So starting out just a little bit with who we are. We are a national nonprofit. We are based right outside of Philadelphia in a suburb called Chadds Ford. You may have heard of Longwood Gardens. We have a sole mission, which is to provide the gift of warmth, confidence, and hope through the gift of a brand new coat. I know that you all are in Florida, and especially at the time of the year right now, coats do not seem very needed, obviously. But we actually do have some partners in Florida, and have worked and shipped coats across the country. So today's conversation will still be relevant, and we'll share some other news with you later in the conversation that may even be more relevant for our Florida partners. But with Operation Warm has been in existence for over 20 years. Our founder, Dick Sanford, saw some children standing on a bus stop in the suburb where we're based, and didn't understand how in a suburb that has relative wealth there would be kids without coats. So he promptly went to the local department store and bought them out of their coats, 58 coats to be exact, and that was the start of Operation Warm. Since then, we have grown and are serving now close to 500,000 children annually, and we actually manufacture our coats to keep costs low and quality high. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the coats shortly. The next slide just speaks to our overall impact. Like I said, in the last 22 years almost, we have served over 3.5 million children. This data is a little bit behind. What we're most proud of on this slide are two things. We are very proud of our efficiency and the fact that 95 cents of every donation dollar that comes to Operation Warm goes directly into serving children. So that is something that, you know, is very important to our founder and to what goes into who we are and what we do. We also are a relatively small nonprofit. We have less than 25 employees. We work nationally, so it makes sense that we couldn't do what we do without the partners, both community, corporate libraries, to be able to serve children across the country and do what we do. So we're grateful for those partnerships and the value they bring. I wanted to give you a little more information specifically about our coat. A lot of people, when they hear about a nonprofit coat organization, you know, they think about donation. Oh, I can give my, you know, coat to Operation Warm and they'll get it to a child who needs it. But we're a little different than that. We manufacture, we only do new coats. We really believe in the value that that new coat brings and the feeling that a child gets when they're able to pick out the color coat that they want and it has a brand new tag on it. And you can see our coats look just like a coat that would be purchased in a department store. We manufacture them in different styles and colors. So they're not all one color. They vary. And we actually work with several of our corporate partners who are retailers and who have knowledge of trending colors and styles, like TJX, like Life is Good, like Benjamin Moore, that help us with selecting those colors on a yearly basis to ensure that we are in front of the latest styles and colors. We manufacture coats in sizes 2T through adult extra large, although our mission sweet spot is to really serve children between the ages or between the grades of pre-K through 6th grade. We know that children come in all ages, in all sizes, all ages too, and we want to make sure that we have a coat to fit them all. So that's why we manufacture in the large range of sizes. Our coats are individually packaged in plastic, and they come in boxes of 6 or 12, and by size and gender. So in one box, you would have 6 or 12 size 10-12 boys coats, but they would be a range of colors and sizes in that box. So that's how we're able to provide a nice array for kids to select from. And moving on to this slide, this next slide, I'm obviously not going to read this to you, but what I want you to take away from this slide is that data is important to us. If you choose to do a warm welcome to the library program, we will ask you to decide kind of what your success measure will be. But we also survey children in our programs as well as parents. And this is some of the data that has come back from that. And I'll let you read that on your own, but you can see that the percentages are pretty high and the impact of the new coat is significant to these children. And it goes beyond just physical warmth. The next slide is just an array of logos of our partners who both help provide funding as well as help with distribution. So obviously this year distributions are going to look quite a bit different. Our coat giving events are going to be different. But for the most part, people are staying committed to the cause and understand that this coming year, being able to provide basic needs to these families is going to be more important than ever before. And then the next slide is a bunch of our library partners, and you can see it really spans the gamut from small local libraries like the Kennett Square Library in my little neck of the woods here, the Newburgh Library in Newburgh, New York, but then large libraries like the Enoch Pratt Library where Cornelia is from, and the Chicago Public Library where we did 12 events. The event really works well in all different kinds of communities. And with that, I will turn it over to Allison to give you some more details on the program specifically.
Terrific. Thank you, Heather. Well, in my role at Operation Warm for the past 2.5 years, I've had the pleasure of working on this program, and it has been very exciting for me to see how it has grown and changed and been really reimagined by creative librarians all across the United States. So this part of the program will go a little bit more into some details as well as outcomes and kind of what we've learned. But I preface this by saying this is really a template. We certainly don't think this is the end-all be-all of how this program can be operationalized. And we've certainly seen some folks kind of take this idea and really run with it and do some wonderful and creative things. But as a brief overview, the goal of our Warm Welcome to the Library program is to provide your libraries with an opportunity to showcase services and programs to children and families living in need in your communities. And the way that we've managed to do this is by having individual neighborhood libraries plan different kind of events at their local locations, and we'll talk a little bit about what those have looked like. But the best part is that up to 150 children receive a brand new Operation Warm Coat as part of these events. And what we have really found in our 20 plus years of doing this work is that a brand new winter coat is a really powerful incentive to get new families to engage with services, whether those be service providers or programming. You may have tried really traditional ways to get your message out into the community. And what we have seen, though, is that a coat, a basic need, being able to provide that as an incentive for attendance is really going to increase exponentially the number of families who are going to engage with your programs. Now, as Heather mentioned, we are a nonprofit, and we think that's really also important to re-articulate. This is not a for-profit initiative, but because we are a nonprofit, there is a donation required for the program. So $5,500 covers the entire cost of the initiative. It is soup to nuts. Everything is included, which includes all of the coats, all of the shipping, which we use via our partner FedEx. It includes all of the materials that are online and accessible through our portal. It includes Operation Warm support staff to help you with your order process and some planning, and also access to our step-by-step toolkit to really run the program. So a lot of people are curious about that and wonder if this is sort of hidden fees or other charges that are part of this, but not at all. We are really clear about that up front. And a little bit later in this presentation, we'll talk about how libraries have sort of tackled this donation in different kinds of fundraising strategies. Now, our graphic on this slide is not very pretty because it is an embedded video, which we are not showing today as part of the Adobe system. But I do encourage you at your convenience to go to our website, to that link that's displayed there, and take a watch. It's a quick video, and I think it's a really lovely introduction to the program. And the best part is that we do interview some of our previous participants. Some librarians were kind enough to provide us with some testimonials about what the program has meant for them and their communities. And you can also get sort of a visual sense of how the program has operated in the physical space of a library. As Heather mentioned earlier on in the program, I think one of the really wonderful things for us this year was to be selected to present at the PLA conference back in February. And I think the reason we were selected to present was because this program aligns really nicely with the current PLA strategic plan. And I'm sure many of you might be familiar with this document, but I've just highlighted a few core statements that I think really nicely highlight the goal of this program as well. So one of the core purposes for PLA right now in their strategic plan is to strengthen public libraries and their contributions to communities. And they have sort of an ambition about how this might occur, which is that long-term, a dynamic public library should be at the heart of every community. And there's also this goal about sort of a transformation of service and focus. So continuing to do all of the wonderful things that you do in your library role, but also moving to a community focus to meet the specific needs of peoples and communities. So this is a program that's really geared to do just that. And one of the things that was really important to us as we were developing this program was to do some research and to also talk to librarians and kind of develop this as a pilot first. So I'm sure that there are those of you out there who like data as much as I do. So I've included just 2 articles that I think were really relevant and pretty interesting as we were starting to think about and conceptualize this program. One is from the Pew Research Institute, and they did a really interesting study about who uses libraries and then what do they do at libraries. And they were particularly interested in low-income families. And then, of course, the Aspen Institute always does great research as well. And they have a wonderful report, again, sort of on the overview of libraries and their changing roles. And to that end, as we were thinking about the program, pretty early on in our conversations with librarians, I think a few key outcomes kind of rose to the top of the conversation. And so I've listed those at the top. They sort of coalesce around 3 ideas. The first being to support strong family development. The second being to develop healthy and thriving children and youth. And the third being to create a culture and climate of literacy for families. So we also really want to be clear that obviously this is not a reading comprehension program. This is not something geared towards early childhood literacy in terms of that being the outcome. But what it can do is really create that culture and climate for families to know about the resource available, to know about all the amazing things you are doing in your particular areas of expertise, and to help families along in their journey to access those resources. So the metrics that were developed with those 3 outcomes in mind are listed below. And the first one is obviously new library card signups. And when this program started, we really thought that that was going to be the key metric that a lot of librarians were going to want to use. And we've, as Heather mentioned, learned a lot about libraries in the past 3 years. And for some, that is the right metric, but other people have done really creative and interesting things as well. So some librarians have been interested in post-event sort of program interactions. So for example, do the families who come to your warm welcome to the library event, did they come back and interact in different ways? Some libraries have been really focused on early literacy kit distribution. So the picture on this slide is actually a picture of the New York City early literacy kit that they used for their events. That was their goal. They really wanted to get those materials into the hands of families with young children. So that was their metric for success. Other libraries have looked at things like attendance increases, both during and after the event, additional donations for the program. Sometimes the code has served as sort of the core component, but they've used that donation to solicit others within their community to provide other types of free clothing. One library approached a local vendor who provided food for families. There have been free books distributed, all different kinds of creative ways that libraries have used this as a platform to really make it a pretty special day for families. On our end, we are obviously pretty interested in parent surveys because we are looking for changes in attitude and behaviors. And a little later in the presentation, I'll talk about what those surveys have showed us. But the last one listed there is a little bit less direct, but maybe equally important. Increasing the visibility for your programs within your community, that may be important for you as part of your plans. You might be looking to increase media coverage or to get publicity for the amazing work that you're doing. And we've really seen that this program sort of hits all of the right buttons on the media side. It's sort of a great public story to tell. It sort of tugs on the heartstrings. So lots of our libraries have been able to get either press releases or media coverage out there in advance of these events. And just to kind of start at the beginning, as I mentioned, we've been doing this program for 3 years. It started in 2017 as a pilot program with the Chicago Public Library. And at that time, we were working with Liz McChesney, who some of you may know. She was the children's librarian for the public library system in Chicago. And she had this really interesting dilemma. Chicago had all of these amazing programs geared towards providing support for low-income families, but they were underutilized. They just weren't getting folks to show up in the numbers that they wanted. And so she decided to work with us and thought it would be really great to offer coats, again, as part of this incentive to get families to come to this initial kind of orientation event and learn about all the amazing things that were happening. So we worked with CPL to identify 300 children who came to the first event. And now CPL did a lot of programming, and that is certainly not to say that anything you would do at your library needs to be quite as elaborate. But I just listed the activities to give you a sense of what they did on that day, and the pictures on the slide are from the event. So you can see there's a really cool floor mat, which was a vocabulary word game. They highlighted their homework helper and science in a backpack programs. They had a STEM activity going on, and they also had some arts, musicians and puppets for families to enjoy as well. So the nice thing for Chicago was that was great that they put on the event, but the more important thing was their goal was to get these families to register for new cards. And as you can see, they were really successful. Of the 300 families who showed up, 116 registered for new cards. And the best part was that 78% were still active 6 months later. So for them, that sort of was far and away the best performance they had had around any of their new library card registration initiatives. So they were really, really pleased. And again, I know for some of you out there, you're in different states and different locations that may have rules around privacy and data tracking. So again, this may not be the metric for you, but I do think we wanted to include it because I think it really highlights the efficacy of the program. So with all of that great data from the first year, in 2018, we were able to expand to 32 different sites in multiple states. And as Heather mentioned earlier on, we continued to work with some really large multi-system libraries, but at the same time, the program worked flawlessly as well in much smaller singular communities. And the types of events continued to expand. Some included story times. Some formed these really fantastic partnerships with other community groups like museums or performers who would come in and give their time. So you can see actually a picture there of one of the mad scientists from a local museum who came and participated in one of the events. And we also saw that libraries really thought about how they could reach out to their funders to find support for this program. So a lot of them produced relationships with community foundations. They also talked to service organizations that were local, like Rotary clubs or Kiwanis or Elks clubs. There was some work with private foundations, as well as groups like Friends of the Library, in a more traditional grant-making sense. And some found corporate sponsors, either at the very local level, or at a larger level, who were interested in sponsoring the program for the recognition. And finally, some were able to access civic funds. And obviously at the moment right now, there is a lot going on with sort of state and government civic funding. So this is potentially, depending on what your library qualifies for, this is potentially a program that could utilize those resources as well. But the best part, of course, kind of came at the end, where we were able to survey 400 parents from 5 states who had participated in this program. Since we had really scaled up, we felt that this was a good time to start collecting some data that would be meaningful. And the statistic at that top of the slide, I think, really speaks to the overall effect, which was that this program really successfully targeted first-time library users, because 2/3 of all parents who were surveyed were unfamiliar with library services prior to the event. And the best thing is that they felt great when they came. They learned some things that would be helpful to their family, and they felt more connected to their community and the organization providing the coat, which in this case was the library. And they were more able to use their income for other needs for their family. By getting that coat, it met a need and provided a valuable resource that was beneficial to these families. And at the bottom again, I think it was really nice for us to see that 99% of family surveys felt like they discovered services that would be helpful and felt like they were going to be returning to use those services in the future. So we scaled up one more time in the third year of our program, which was last season, our 2019 season. We retained our partnerships that we'd had in place, and we also brought on some really great new partners, like the state of Delaware, Salt Lake City, Columbus, Ohio, and got to see how this program again got reinterpreted with new partners. And 2019 produced more good news for us. Again, for those of you interested in data, obviously being able to replicate statistical results is really important. So we were able to do our parent survey again and got almost identical statistical results. And if you're curious, we do have an infographic available at that link if you'd like to review those. But we also added a new metric of success, which we asked folks how likely they were to share this new knowledge with others in their community. And 99% said they were likely to do that. And it's really important because word of mouth for particular communities has a lot more bandwidth than any of your traditional media or marketing or social outreach that you're going to do. There's an element of trust that comes from folks being able to talk about a firsthand experience and sharing it with others. That, again, hopefully means your message is getting further and farther out into the folks who would really benefit from being able to come in and learn more about the remarkable services you provide. When we got to the PLA presentation, we were also really delighted to learn at that time that we had been selected as one of the 10 presentations at the conference that highlighted PLA's new professional development theory of change. One of the focuses being for librarians to become data-driven leaders. So that was a really nice and surprising accolade. But that's a great document. If you haven't seen it, it is on the PLA website. I encourage you to take a look. It's sort of tied back to those strategic initiatives that we were chatting about earlier in the presentation. And we have some anecdotal comments, lots of them on our website and one here. But this is the part in the presentation where I'd prefer for you to hear that anecdotal evidence from somebody who's actually done this before. So Cornelia Beckett is joining us today from the Enoch Pratt Library in Baltimore, and she has been a really wonderful supporter of the program and participant over the past couple of years. So I am going to turn it over to her to talk about her firsthand experiences. So Cornelia, I'm hoping you are with us. I know you were having a little bit of tech support earlier.
Allison, thank you so much for handing it over to me. Also intro. I hope everyone can hear me. If not, so I would just like to address some FAQs that I get from fellow library professionals. I am a program specialist at the Enoch Pratt Free Library, so I work out of our central location in Baltimore, and we hold these programs at various branches around the city. So I'm just going to go through some of our FAQs. So one I hear often is, how do I do beneficiary selection? How do you decide which branch to do it at? And we want to target based on data, so demographics, including schools nearby to target, especially if they're Title I, in our neighborhoods that are more socioeconomically needy here in Baltimore. We want to make sure that we're filling that material need. So looking at those data, and very importantly, relationships are a key piece of where we decide to do it. So prioritizing a branch where you know you'll have a terrific librarian who can really get the word out, or a keenly engaged branch manager who makes a point of reaching out to local community organizations to partner with, or even in communities where you have boosters, whether that be a local faith organization, a neighborhood group, a trusted organizer, advocate, whomever. So those factors all combine selections, and those were my baseline branches that I chose. And then to branch out and to build the program, I took some chances on neighborhoods where if perhaps we didn't have that relationship or data, we have the opportunity to build it. So another question I hear often is, but how do you manage the numbers? So we get quotes for about 150 participants, but we round up and over order so that we get it closer to 180 or 200. And what that looks like is a variety of sizes, unless you try to target a certain age group. For example, you might be looking at only preschoolers and kindergartners, in which case you'd order a bunch of stuff between 2T and size 7 or 8. And on the flyers, and Operation Warm gives you a great database of tools you can use, including flyers into which you can plug your own information. You could advertise, okay, this is for little kids only. Or you could try and target a range of folks. So we have about, let's say, about 150 children served. The typical program time would be about 2 hours. First come, first serve works for us, but you might also try pre-registration. And then for crowd management, I'm doing of take a number, just like you might have in a deli. Take a number, and I do it by family group, not by individual person. And family kind of come in, or groups can come in and quote unquote shop. We want to make it pleasant, like a shopping experience, to have some choice and not have it rushed, not have it feel like a handout per se, but rather a hand up and in the spirit of generosity and warm welcome, letting people select color, style, etc. in a more leisurely way. And so this year we're thinking about how to do it in a more safely and socially distanced way, but many of the same elements will still apply. We would probably have some kinds of take a number so that family groups who come together can come in and pick out a coat, or perhaps we might do coming up to an outside table, permitting, and some kind of distance line. And then again, with sizing, I order a wide range, but Operation Warm also has digital resources where you can plug in children's ages, who may have signed up, and they'll calculate the right sizing in order. So just some other things that I would recommend. It's a great opportunity to tie in programming, either from your staff, like a story time, or advertising, let's say, computer classes, or a maker space, or many other cities will do this. Bring in community organizations, like, for example, we partner with a local art museum to set up a button with one of their art educators. And so while families are waiting or lingering afterwards, kids can make brand new buttons to their coat. It's such a cute fusion of art and kind of feel-good personalization, while also encouraging families to stick around and check out our resources. So again, what will look differently this year? It could be signing up for digital library cards, or paper printed out information like literacy kits, or literacy tips for home. So, bringing your flexibility and problem solving you already do. Working in libraries every day is key. And I'm happy to answer questions from folks. My email will be provided at the end if you're curious about the logistics of what it might look like in a mid-sized urban city like Baltimore, or just making it work for your community. Thank you very much.
Great. Cornelia, thanks so much for joining us and overcoming some technical issues. I hope everybody was able to hear Cornelia's comments. But as she mentioned, her contact information will be available at the end of the presentation if you'd like to follow up with her and have a more in-depth conversation with somebody who's done the program before. The next part of our slide is just going to briefly cover some lessons that we've learned as we've been doing this program for the past 3 years. And one that we have already talked about is just the evolving goals and increased personalization of the program. And we think that's a positive, not a negative development. We have seen that different libraries have had different needs and have used different levels and different types of success measures. And we think that's really fantastic. We want this to be a tool in your toolbox to accomplish whatever is the most important for you and your community. But one thing for sure that will happen is that this program is a really excellent community connector. And we've already talked a lot about, obviously, the parent and child population impacted by this program. But as Cornelia mentioned, this is sometimes a great way for you to form a partnership with your local neighborhood school. It can be an opportunity to form partnerships with other community-based organizations or corporations in your area, and also potentially to bring volunteers into your library to learn about all of the wonderful work you do. In terms of the actual program execution, it's been really interesting in the past 3 years. I don't think I've spoken to the same person with the same title for all of the different libraries that have done the program. It really can be managed by a myriad of folks in different roles. Sometimes it's really managed as an outreach or communications or marketing initiative. Sometimes it's seen as more of a children's department program. And other times it really is tied to other literacy or programming things that you have in place at the moment. So it really varies. And as Cornelia mentioned, the most important thing is just finding the right person who's enthusiastic about the program implementation. Cornelia talked a little bit about student selection, and we get a lot of questions regarding the pros and cons of partnering with other nonprofits. And our best advice here is it really just depends on the quality of your relationship already in place with the other nonprofit before you start this program. We did have 2 libraries last season who partnered with other nonprofits working with children to bring those families in as beneficiaries to the event. And we can say quite honestly that some of those initiatives were successful and others were not. And with all things, it really boiled down to communication and roles and defining outcomes. So if you do have a great relationship in place, certainly adding that component can reduce the workload. But at the same time, it does put more cooks in the kitchen. So making sure everybody's on the same page with roles and responsibilities just becomes that much more important. On the funding side, I think what we've learned, and we've heard some really lovely things from our library partners, is that this is a great program to re-engage your funders who are already supporting your initiatives. That's something that we talk a lot about at Operation Warm, this concept of funder fatigue. So being able to show your longtime supporters that you are doing something new that's data-based, that can help you achieve whatever your own personal strategic goals are, can be really meaningful. It's also a great way to engage new funders who maybe haven't interacted with you before. This just might be the right program that's going to really appeal and encourage them to get involved with your organization, either with financial or volunteer support. So our future plans have obviously evolved and evolved quite a bit since February when we first presented this program, but the overall goals are still the same. And what we've learned is that this is a really great program for expansion for certain libraries if they've got certain things in place. So in particular, having a plan for converting new families into long-term service consumers, if that's a priority for your organization. Also, if you have really fantastic programs, but you have room for growth in enrollment, so it's not necessarily creating something from scratch. You have things that are already operationalized and you want to make sure that families are taking advantage of those services. And in particular, if you are focused on your resources that are currently underutilized by low-income families. And obviously, with the very significant changes to the economic situation, we know that there are many families right now who need services and potentially need services for the first time. So learning about those opportunities is really timely. And again, we just stress that having somebody as a point of contact to implement the program and to collect whatever data is going to be your points of success will help you execute the program successfully. And right now, in a COVID-19 reality world, we do have some thoughts about how this program could continue to operate. We are, of course, hoping to keep the momentum going, but recognize that there are very significant challenges for all of us right now, nonprofits and community organizations alike. But I will just say that we have just recently completed outreach to many of our retained partners. And of all the folks who participated in the program last year, which was over 50 sites, right now we only have 2 partners who have declined to participate in the program this year. That's how strongly they feel about it. And just as Cornelia articulated, they've been sharing with us that they say, we don't quite know how this is going to work, but we are going to make it work because we think it's really important. So there is a traditional model where if a library is open, codes can be distributed in person. And then there are also ways that we've thought to do this, which would involve contactless delivery, distribution in outside parking lots, or physical spaces like a sidewalk, or maybe a basic service collaboration that would allow you to work at a site where children and families are already receiving services and put in their hands both the codes as well as potentially handouts about online resources available, ways to sign up for benefits that families may need, registering again for that digital library card, whatever you are doing to support families during the next couple of months. So of course we hope that we've piqued your curiosity about this program, and if you are interested, we'd love to talk to you a little bit further. The first step would be to visit our website where we have some starter handouts, a lot of which has been covered in this presentation, but we also have a 3-page handout about funding options. Some tools that we have found have been really successful. And we encourage you to take a look at that, and one of which, of course, is partnering with us to talk about those options if that appeals. If you are feeling enthusiastic, we encourage you to complete the program sign-up form, and that will allow you to gain access to our programming staff and our easy-to-use toolkit and planning tools that are available on our website. We are a seasonal program in that we run our Warm Welcome to the Library events during the fall and winter months. So we start as early as September and typically continue until the end of January. And once you've chosen a date, it usually takes between 6 to 8 weeks to get everything up and running. Although we have done things in a much tighter time capacity, it's not as easy once we start to get busy with all of our other programming initiatives that happen at the same time. But again, the best part is that we hope you are going to provide warmth, confidence, and hope to kids in need. And really what we've learned is cold is relative. We know you're all joining us today from a relatively warm weather climate, but you would be amazed, as Heather mentioned, at the places we ship coats. One of our largest sites is in Houston. We ship coats to Los Angeles, New Mexico, Phoenix, and Florida on a regular basis. And we hear stories from those places about how children use the coats. And to be honest, sometimes they are distressing in that the coat is used for the child to sleep in because the family doesn't have blankets or sheets. Or the coat is the only piece of clothing the child has to keep them dry in a wet climate. So it may not seem like a coat is going to be first and foremost in the minds of what your families need, but it is really interesting to hear back from those families just how important and meaningful a brand new coat can be. So we have reached pretty much the end of our presentation, just on time, with about 10 minutes to spare if folks have questions. And I've just included this lovely testimonial from Liz McChesney, who, again, is the past director of Children's Services in Chicago, who is now working for the Clinton Foundation. She's a really fascinating and amazing librarian. And I think she really nicely summarized what they accomplished in Chicago with this program, which is that obviously they do a lot of special events for children, but they really felt like the Operation Warm Coat gifting events were a highlight in their programming. So there was the emotional component of seeing the happiness for families who have so little. And then, of course, their objective, which was to attract families who had never been inside the neighborhood library to come and learn about those resources. And then, of course, we're all looking towards the end goal, which is that if a child gets into their neighborhood library, they're likely to return. And the more time a child spends with library programs, the more their academic performance improves. So we know that this is just one of many steps to help families and children on their educational journey, but we've been really delighted and pleased to see how this has evolved and all of the wonderful things that have come as a result of these amazing partnerships that we've formed with librarians all across the United States. So we've provided our contact information as part of this presentation. Of course, we'd love to hear from you. If you have questions or would like to discuss things further, we welcome those conversations. We do have about 5 or so minutes right now. If there are some questions that anyone would like to put in the dialog box, we'd be happy to address those. And in addition, if you have anything else you are curious about, let us know, and we can try and have either Heather, myself, or Cornelia talk about those topics before we sign off for today.
I did want to add, sorry, go ahead,
Heather.
I wanted to add, I know I alluded to some other news that I wanted to share at the end, which was this year we actually did a very small shoe pilot program. And I wanted to reach out to you all and share that with you all, because obviously shoes are needed in every climate. So it may be of particular interest, but we believe that in the coming year, we're going to expand that program a bit. Just like our coats, we manufactured the shoes in gender neutral colors. We believe we're going to be targeting a younger age group, probably pre-K through 2nd grade, possibly 3rd grade. But there'll be more information to share down the road. But I just thought I would pop that in for a bit of information for you all. Now I'm done, Anne.
Oh, that's okay. You can go on forever. I love this presentation.
Terrific. Well, I see just some thank yous coming in the comment box, so I'm going to interpret that as we've anticipated your questions and hopefully given you all of the information you need to consider this as an opportunity for your library. Some folks have asked as well about the timeline for us. Obviously, we know it's July right now. Some of you are thinking about fall program, and some of you are simply just thinking about what is right in front of you that you need to manage today. So this is not a commitment you need to make right now. Please talk to others on your staff and have those conversations about whether or not this is a fit. If it is, we are all working remotely, so certainly if you are ready to go and sign up, we can start talking to you during the summer. But if you get into September or even October or November and are thinking that this is something you want to do, please do reach out to us, because we can do the event into the 2021 winter months. And we'd love to talk to you if you're interested. So please don't let timing be preventative if this is not a decision you want to make today. We definitely understand that for many of you, lots is in flux at the moment. And we'd be excited to work with you at any time in the year if you'd like to reach out to us.
I think it's amazing to see how this program has exploded. You have so many participants and do so much all over the country. It's really neat.
Terrific. Thank you, Anne. And again, it looks like we've managed the questions. So we thank you all for joining us today and hope to hear from some of you.
Take care, everyone.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you, Cornelia, for providing the library view of this and how the program works. And thank you to Heather and Allison for a fantastic presentation. Very well done, very well crafted. We hope you all enjoyed it, and we'll see you again soon at another PCI webinar. Have a great afternoon, everybody.